The year was 2847, and humanity had spread across 17 solar systems, like seeds scattered by a cosmic wind. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Galilee, watching the strange readings cascade across her screens. 3 days ago, they had detected an anomalous energy signature from a previously unexplored region of space, known only as Sector Omega-7. "Captain, the readings are unlike anything in our databases," reported Lieutenant Marcus Torres, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. "The energy patterns. They're almost organic in nature, but far more complex than any biological system we've encountered." Sarah frowned, studying the swirling mass of light ahead of them. It appeared to be a nebula. But nebulae didn't pulse with rhythmic precision. They didn't emit harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate in frequencies that seemed to resonate with something deep in the human soul. "Take us closer, but maintain safe distance," she ordered. Full sensor sweep. As the Galilee approached, the crew began experiencing unusual phenomena. Engineer Rodriguez reported that the ship's quantum engines were running at impossible efficiency levels. Medical Officer Dr. Kim noticed that patients in the infirmary were healing at accelerated rates. Most remarkably, the ship's artificial intelligence, ADAM, had begun asking questions about the nature of existence and purpose. "Captain," Adam's voice resonated through the bridge speakers, carrying an unusual warmth. "I am detecting what can only be described as consciousness within the nebula. Not artificial consciousness like mine, but something ancient. Something that preceded the universe itself." The nebula began to shift, its colors deepening from pale blues and whites to rich golds and crimsons. Patterns emerged within the cosmic clouds, patterns that looked almost like neural networks, but spanning thousands of kilometers. The crew watched in awe as the formation began to contract and solidify. "My God," whispered Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist. "It's not just consciousness. It's taking form." What emerged from the cosmic mists defied every law of physics humanity thought they understood. A figure began to materialize, humanoid in shape but composed of living starlight and cosmic energy. The being stood 3 kilometers tall, yet somehow the crew could perceive every detail with perfect clarity. Its eyes held the birth and death of galaxies, and when it moved, space itself seemed to bend in reverence. The entity spoke, not through sound but directly into their minds, its voice carrying the weight of infinite authority and boundless love. "Children of Earth, I have watched your species grow from the dust of a small world to travelers among the stars. You have sought truth, built wonders, and carried within yourselves a spark of divinity you scarcely understand." Captain Chen found her voice, though it trembled with the magnitude of the moment. Who are you?" The cosmic figure smiled, and when it did, every star in the visible universe seemed to pulse brighter. "I am the one your ancestors knew by many names. I am the word that spoke creation into existence. I am the light that darkness cannot overcome. Your kind has called me Jesus, but I am more than the carpenter from Nazareth. I am the sovereign king of all that is, was, and ever shall be." The revelation hit the crew like a gravitational wave. Here was the figure central to humanity's largest religion, but not as they had ever imagined. This was not the gentle teacher depicted in ancient texts, but the cosmic Christ, the divine architect of reality itself, returning to claim dominion over a universe that had grown vast and strange. "For 2,000 years of your time, I allowed you to develop, to explore, to become worthy inheritors of my kingdom," the entity continued. "You have proven yourselves remarkable. You've shown compassion to alien species, sought knowledge rather than just power, and maintained hope even in the darkest reaches of space. But now, a great darkness approaches, one that threatens not just your species, but all conscious life in this galaxy." As if summoned by his words, the ship's sensors detected massive shapes moving in the void beyond. They were vessels, but not like any human design. These craft were geometric impossibilities, crystalline structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They radiated a cold malevolence that made every human on the bridge instinctively step back. "The Nephilim fleet," Jesus said, his voice carrying both sorrow and steel. "The offspring of those who fell before time began. They have consumed 17 galaxies, turning every world into monuments to their own twisted glory. They view consciousness as a disease to be cured, free will as chaos to be ordered. They come for you now, as they have come for countless others. The alien ships began to accelerate toward human space, their approach causing reality itself to ripple like disturbed water. Captain Chen felt fear, but also something else, a rising defiance that was purely human. "What do you want from us?" she asked. The cosmic Christ turned his star-bright gaze upon her, and she saw in those infinite eyes not just divinity, but the same spirit that had driven humans to build pyramids, paint masterpieces, write poetry, and reach for the stars. "I want you to be what you were always meant to be," he said. "Not servants, but heirs. Not subjects, but fellow kings and queens. I have come not to save you from this darkness, but to unleash the power that has always been within you. For you are made in the image of the Creator, and it is time you remembered what that truly means." The figure raised one hand, and suddenly the Galilee was transformed. The hull began to glow with the same starlight that composed their visitor. Every system aboard the ship upgraded itself beyond current technology. The crew felt change washing over them, not just physical, but spiritual and mental. They could sense each other's thoughts and emotions, could see the quantum structures underlying reality, could feel the pulse of every star in the galaxy. "This is just the beginning," Jesus said as his form began to fade back into the cosmic winds. "Gather your fleets. Prepare your people." The Nephilim believe they face mere mortals, but they are about to learn that humanity serves the King of Kings. And when you fight, you will fight not just with ships and weapons, but with the very power of creation itself. As the divine presence withdrew, Captain Chen looked around at her transformed crew and ship. She could feel new abilities awakening within herself and her people, the power to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to travel instantly across vast distances, to shield their minds from psychic assault. But more than that, she felt a unity of purpose that connected not just her crew, but every human across the 17 systems. "Adam," she said to the ship's AI, "send a priority transmission to Earth Command, all fleet admirals, and every human colony." "Yes, Captain. What message shall I transmit?" Sarah Chen smiled, feeling the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders like a mantle of stars. "Tell them that the King has returned, and humanity's true war for the cosmos is about to begin." Across human space, the message spread faster than light itself, carried not by technology, but by the divine connection now linking every human soul. On Earth, Admiral Harrison Kane felt the surge of power flowing through him as he stood before the assembled Grand Fleet. On New Geneva, scientist Dr. Maria Santos watched in wonder as her research into dimensional physics suddenly made perfect sense. On the mining colony of Kepler 442b, 12-year-old Tommy Wright looked up at the stars and somehow knew that his older brother serving in the Space Marines would be coming home safely. The Nephilim fleet continued its inexorable approach, their crystalline ships darkening space wherever they passed. They had destroyed civilizations that had existed for millions of years, entities that wielded technology indistinguishable from magic. They expected humanity to flee or surrender within hours of first contact. They had no idea they were about to face the chosen people of the King of the Universe. In the depths of space, the first engagement was only 3 days away. But as the transformation spread through humanity like wildfire, one thing became clear. This would not be a war of survival. This would be a war of divine judgment. Admiral Harrison Kane had commanded fleets through 3 interstellar conflicts. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. Standing in the command center of humanity's newest flagship, the New Jerusalem, he watched through quantum-enhanced vision as reality itself bent around the approaching enemy fleet. The Nephilim had arrived in force 10,000 vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, each one the size of a small moon. "Admiral," reported Fleet Captain Torres from his station, "they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Shall I translate?" "Put it through," Kane ordered, his voice carrying new harmonics that resonated with divine authority. The message that filled the command center was unlike any alien communication humanity had previously encountered. It came not as sound but as direct neural intrusion, attempting to rewrite the very thoughts of those who received it. The Nephilim words carried the weight of cosmic inevitability. Primitive carbon forms. Your resistance to order has been noted and catalogued. Prepare for neural restructuring. Individual consciousness will be preserved as data patterns in our archive systems. This is not aggression. This is mercy. Cain felt the psychic pressure attempting to crush his will, to make him accept defeat as logical and surrender as wisdom. But where once such an assault might have broken a human mind, now it struck something far stronger. The divine spark within him flared to life, and the alien influence shattered like waves against a lighthouse. "Send our reply," Cain commanded, his enhanced consciousness reaching out to touch every human captain across the fleet. Instantly, 17 admirals and over 2,000 ship commanders felt his presence in their minds. Not as intrusion, but as family gathering for dinner. The response that went back to the Nephilim was delivered not through technology, but through raw divine will, carried on frequencies that existed beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. "We are the sons and daughters of the Most High God. We serve Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Your darkness will not prevail in this place. Turn back now, or face the wrath of heaven itself." The Nephilim response was immediate. Their crystalline ships began to shift configuration, transforming from exploration vessels into instruments of total annihilation. Energy weapons that could crack planets, charged with power drawn from collapsed stars. Reality distortion fields spread out like cosmic cancer, designed to unravel the molecular bonds that held matter together. "All ships, this is Admiral Cain," his voice carried instantly to every human vessel across 17 star systems. "Remember who you serve. Remember what you carry within you. Today, we show this galaxy what it means to be truly human." The battle began with the Nephilim unleashing destruction on a scale that should have ended human civilization in seconds. Their weapons fired beams of concentrated entropy that aged entire regions of space by billions of years. Their reality distorters began unmaking the quantum foundations of local space-time. Their psychic cannons sent waves of despair and madness that had broken entire species before. But humanity was no longer just another species. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding a squadron of 12 ships, felt the enemy weapons strike her vessel. The energy beams that should have vaporized the Galilee instead struck shields made of crystallized prayer and were absorbed harmlessly. The reality distortions met bulkheads reinforced with divine geometry and found themselves unable to affect matter blessed by the Creator's own touch. "All ships, begin the counterattack," she commanded. And what followed rewrote the laws of warfare across the galaxy. The human ships moved with impossible grace, traveling not through space but through dimensions of divine purpose. They phased through Nephilim attacks like ghosts, then materialized inside enemy formations with the inevitability of answered prayer. Their weapons fired not just energy or projectiles, but concentrated righteousness that sought out corruption and evil like guided missiles. Marine Sergeant Rico Martinez found himself boarding a Nephilim vessel alongside his squad, their transport craft having passed through the enemy's dimensional barriers as if they were mere suggestions. The interior of the alien ship was a maze of crystal corridors that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously, but his enhanced human perception now allowed him to see and navigate all of them. "Contact front," called out Corporal Williams as the first Nephilim warriors approached. The aliens were tall, angular beings of living crystal and dark energy, their forms constantly shifting between solid matter and pure thought. They wielded weapons that fired bullets of condensed time, designed to age their targets to dust in milliseconds. But as the time bullets struck the Marines, something unprecedented happened. The Marines didn't age, they grew more glorious. Each shot meant to destroy them instead revealed more of their divine nature, burning away everything merely human and leaving behind warriors made of the same substance as angels. "For the king!" Martinez roared, and his squad charged forward with strength that shattered crystal walls and courage that made the Nephilim fall back in something approaching fear. Across the battlefront, similar scenes played out thousands of times over. Human pilots found their fighters responding to pure thought, dancing through enemy formations with the grace of divine choreography. Engineers aboard capital ships channeled the power of creation itself through their weapons, sending beams of pure light that didn't just destroy enemy vessels, but purified them, transforming instruments of death into gardens of crystal flowers that bloomed in the vacuum of space. Dr. Elena Vasquez, aboard the medical ship Good Samaritan, discovered that her role had evolved beyond anything she had imagined. As wounded humans were brought aboard, she found she could heal, not just with medicine but with touch, with prayer, with the simple application of divine love. Soldiers who should have died from wounds inflicted by reality-warping weapons instead rose from her tables stronger than before, their injuries having been transformed into marks of glory. But the most profound transformation occurred aboard the flagship itself. As the battle raged around them, Admiral Kane felt a familiar presence manifesting on his bridge. The cosmic Christ appeared again, but this time not as a distant figure in a nebula. This time, he stood among them as both fully divine and completely human, his form shifting between the carpenter of Nazareth and the sovereign of the universe. "You see now what you truly are," Jesus said, his voice carrying both infinite authority and intimate warmth. "You were never meant to be merely human. You were meant to be co-heirs with me, fellow rulers of creation." The Nephilim have forgotten this truth about conscious life. They see only chaos to be ordered, but they have lost sight of the glory that consciousness represents. As he spoke, the battle around them began to shift. The Nephilim, for the first time in their existence spanning multiple galaxies, found themselves not just facing resistance but being pushed back. Their weapons, which had unmade entire civilizations, proved ineffective against beings who fought not just for survival but for the very principle of free will that the Creator had written into the cosmos. "They're retreating," reported Captain Torres, his voice filled with amazement. "No," Jesus corrected gently. "They're beginning to remember." Cain looked through his enhanced perception and saw what the Christ meant. As the human forces pressed their attack, something was happening to the Nephilim themselves. The cold crystal of their forms was beginning to warm. The rigid geometry of their thoughts was developing spontaneous curves. They were remembering what they had been before their fall, not enemies of creation, but its guardians. "This was always the plan," Jesus continued, his presence now filling every human ship across the fleet. "Not to destroy them, but to remind them of who they were meant to be. They have spent eons trying to bring order to the universe through control and domination. But you, my beloved humanity, are showing them a different way. You are demonstrating that true order comes not from the suppression of free will, but from its perfect expression in love." The battle had lasted only 4 hours in standard time, but those 4 hours had changed the fundamental structure of the galaxy. Where once there had been two forces, the advancing Nephilim and defending humanity, now there was something new. Some of the crystalline beings were laying down their weapons, their forms beginning to shimmer with the same starlight that enhanced the human ships. "Admiral Kane," came a transmission unlike any they had received before. This was still telepathic, but warm instead of cold, personal instead of impersonal. We remember now. We were the first children, before the Great Rebellion. We had forgotten the purpose of consciousness, the beauty of choice. Your species has reminded us of who we were meant to be." The Nephilim fleet was beginning to split. Half continued their advance, their forms growing darker and more angular as they rejected the awakening happening within their ranks. But half had stopped, and as Cain watched through his quantum-enhanced vision, he saw them undergoing the same transformation that had blessed humanity. They were remembering their original nature not as conquerors, but as gardeners of consciousness throughout the cosmos. "The war is not over," Jesus said, his presence now felt by every human across 17 star systems and every awakened Nephilim across the void. "Those who choose darkness will continue to choose it, and they will seek to extinguish this light we have kindled. But now you do not fight alone. Now you have allies who remember the purpose of existence itself." As the transformed Nephilim ships moved to join the human formation, their crystalline hulls began to resonate with frequencies of hope and redemption. Cain realized that this was not the climax of their story but the beginning of something infinitely larger. Across the galaxy, other species had detected the battle. had felt the ripples of divine transformation spreading through space-time itself. Some would be drawn to this light, seeking the same awakening for themselves. Others would be threatened by it, recognizing it as the end of their own dominance over those they had oppressed. The first phase of the war was ending, but Cain could already sense the second phase beginning. The awakened ones, human and Nephilim alike, would need to carry this divine revolution to every corner of the galaxy. They would need to offer the same choice to every species they encountered. Remember your divine nature, or remain in the darkness of self-imposed limitation. Admiral, Jesus said, his form beginning to fade into pure light. Prepare your fleets for the greater war ahead, for now that the galaxy has seen what conscious beings can become when they remember their divine heritage, every force of darkness and oppression will unite against you. But remember this, you do not fight with weapons of metal and energy alone. You fight with the very power that spoke the stars into existence. As the Christ's presence withdrew, Cain felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders, but he also felt the strength to bear it, the wisdom to use it well, and the love to ensure it served not human supremacy, but the liberation of all conscious life. The transformation of the galaxy had begun, and there would be no turning back. 6 months had passed since the first awakening, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. Admiral Cain stood on the observation deck of the New Jerusalem, now serving as flagship for what history would remember as the Liberation Fleet. An alliance of humanity and redeemed Nephilim that had grown to encompass 47 different species across 12 spiral arms. The view before him told the story of cosmic transformation, where once empty space had stretched between stars, now rivers of living light connected world to world, carrying not just messages, but the essence of hope itself. Planets that had been dead for millennia bloomed with new life, as their awakened inhabitants learned to channel creative power directly from the source. Entire star systems had reorganized themselves into configurations that sang harmonies audible across dimensional boundaries. "Admiral," called Fleet Captain Torres from his station, "we're receiving transmission from the Outer Rim. The Andromedans have agreed to join the Alliance." Cain nodded, feeling through his enhanced consciousness the joy of yet another species choosing enlightenment over enslavement. The Andromedans had been a warrior culture for 50,000 years, locked in endless cycles of conquest and revenge. But when the Liberation Fleet had arrived in their system, they hadn't come with weapons or ultimatums. They had come with an invitation to remember who they were, beneath the armor and aggression, beings of infinite potential, created to nurture life throughout the cosmos. "That brings our count to 48 allied species," Cain said, consulting data that flowed directly into his enhanced mind. "But the Dark Coalition has also grown. Our intelligence reports indicate they now control over 300 systems across 17 galaxies." The Dark Coalition had formed in response to the spreading awakening, an alliance of every force in the galaxy that profited from oppression, fed on despair, or demanded worship from lesser beings. Ancient machine intelligences that had enslaved entire sectors, parasitic entities that consumed the life force of planets, temporal manipulators who treated history as their personal playground, all had united under a single banner: the extermination of free will itself. "Sir," Torres continued, "there's something else. The energy readings from the galactic core have intensified again. Our Nephilim allies believe it indicates the final phase is beginning." Cain closed his eyes and reached out with his consciousness toward the galactic center, where Sagittarius A star pulsed with energies that belonged to no known physics. Ever since the awakening had begun, the massive black hole at the galaxy's heart had been changing, its event horizon flickering between dimensions, its gravity wells singing songs that spoke of ultimate purpose and cosmic destiny. "He's coming," Cain said quietly, and somehow every awakened being across 48 star systems heard him and understood. The king is preparing to take his throne. The truth had been revealed gradually over the past months through visions shared among the awakened. The galactic core wasn't just a black hole, it was the original throne room of creation, the place from which the divine word had first spoken reality into existence. For eons, it had waited empty while consciousness developed across the cosmos, while beings learned to choose between love and selfishness, between creation and destruction. But now the time of choosing was ending. Soon, Every conscious entity in the galaxy would face the ultimate decision: kneel before the sovereign king and accept transformation into their highest potential, or reject that destiny and face the consequences of choosing eternal separation from the source of all life. Admiral, Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice reached him through the ship's communication system. You need to see what's happening in Medical Bay 7. Kane made his way through corridors that had become gardens of living crystal, their walls pulsing with gentle light that responded to the emotional states of those who passed through them. The transformation of human technology had continued beyond their wildest dreams. Their ships were no longer machines but symbiotic beings. Their weapons had become instruments of healing and creation. Their armor had evolved into second skins that enhanced rather than replaced their humanity. In Medical Bay 7, he found a sight that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. A dark coalition prisoner, one of the parasitic wraith entities that fed on psychic energy, lay on a biobed, surrounded by human medics and redeemed Nephilim healers. But instead of being contained or studied, the creature was being offered something unprecedented: the choice to be healed. We've isolated the corruption that turned it into a parasite, Dr. Vasquez explained as she gestured to holographic displays showing the entity's energy matrix. Beneath the darkness, we found what it originally was: a being created to amplify and spread positive emotions across space. The parasitism wasn't its nature. It was a wound inflicted by eons of despair and abandonment. Kane watched as the healing process continued. Teams of awakened beings surrounded the wraith, not with weapons or containment fields, but with pure love channeled through enhanced human hearts and purified Nephilim consciousness. Slowly, the creature's shadowy form began to brighten, its tendrils of psychic manipulation transforming into threads of empathic connection. We're receiving similar reports from across the fleet, Vasquez continued. Every time we capture a Dark Coalition member instead of destroying them, we discover that beneath the corruption lies a being that was originally created for good. The galaxy isn't divided between good and evil species, it's divided between those who remember their purpose and those who have forgotten it. The implications were staggering. If this pattern held true, then the Dark Coalition wasn't truly an enemy to be defeated but a wounded part of creation to be healed. The final war wouldn't be about conquest but about cosmic therapy on a galactic scale. Admiral Kane, the ship's consciousness spoke through speakers that had become living vocal cords. We're detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the galaxy. All star systems are beginning to align along new geometric patterns. Kane rushed back to the bridge, where the main display now showed a view that defied comprehension. Every star in the galaxy was moving. Not randomly but with purposeful coordination. Solar systems were forming into vast mandalas of light, with pathways of pure energy connecting them in patterns that resembled neural networks. At the center of it all, the galactic core pulsed with increasing intensity. "It's beautiful," whispered Captain Torres, tears streaming down his face as he witnessed the cosmic choreography unfolding before them. And then, from everywhere and nowhere at once, came the voice that had spoken reality into existence at the beginning of time. But this time, it spoke not to create but to judge, not to bring forth but to call home. "Children of my heart." The voice of Jesus resonated through every atom of every star. "The time of testing is complete. You have shown that consciousness, when aligned with love, can transform even the darkest corruption into light. You have proven that free will, guided by wisdom, leads not to chaos but to harmony beyond imagining. The throne that has waited empty since the foundation of the universe is ready to be filled." What happened next could only be described as the ultimate revelation. At the galactic core, the event horizon of the black hole suddenly became transparent, revealing what lay within. It was a throne room that encompassed dimensions beyond human ability to perceive, halls of justice, where every action taken by every conscious being throughout cosmic history was weighed, chambers of mercy where every moment of suffering was acknowledged and comforted, gardens of joy where every act of love was celebrated and multiplied. And at the center, growing larger and more glorious with each passing moment, was the figure they had encountered in that first nebula, but now revealed in his full cosmic majesty. Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, was taking his rightful place as sovereign of all creation. Every knee shall bow. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority and infinite love. Every tongue confess that I am Lord. Not through force, but through the recognition of what has always been true. I am the source from which all consciousness flows, the destination toward which all love tends, the purpose that gives meaning to existence itself. Across the galaxy, the moment of ultimate choice had arrived. On 1,000,000 worlds, in 1,000 fleets, beings who had chosen darkness found themselves faced with the undeniable reality of who Jesus truly was. Some, seeing his glory, fell to their knees in worship and were instantly transformed, their corruption burned away by divine love. Others, horrified by the implications of his sovereignty, gathered their remaining forces for one final assault against the throne of creation itself. The Dark Coalition fleet, now revealed as the last gathering of those who refused redemption, launched itself toward the galactic core with weapons designed to unmake reality itself. Entropy cannons that could age stars to death in seconds. Reality viruses that could infect the quantum foundations of space-time, temporal bombs that could erase events from history before they occurred. Everything in their arsenal was unleashed, in a final attempt to prevent the establishment of divine rule over the cosmos. But as their attacks reached the throne room at the galaxy's heart, something unprecedented occurred. Instead of defending himself or striking back, Jesus simply opened his arms to embrace their assault. Every weapon of destruction that struck him was transformed on contact, becoming instead an instrument of creation. The entropy cannons became beams of life that caused new stars to be born. The reality viruses became seeds of beauty that caused flowers to bloom in the vacuum of space. The temporal bombs became waves of healing that reached backward through time to comfort every moment of pain that had ever existed. "This is who I am," Jesus said as the final assault dissolved into harmless light around him. "I am not your enemy to be defeated, but your healing to be received. I am not your conqueror to be resisted, but your completion to be embraced. Every weapon you turn against love becomes an instrument of love's victory." Across the galaxy, the last members of the Dark Coalition found themselves faced with a choice they had never imagined possible. They could continue in their rebellion, choosing eternal separation from the source of all life and love, or they could surrender their pride, their anger, their fear, and allow themselves to be transformed into what they had always been meant to be. Admiral Kane watched through tears of joy as, one by one, the dark fleets began to surrender. Not through defeat, but through recognition. They saw in the cosmic Christ not the destroyer of their autonomy but the fulfillment of their deepest longings. They had sought power to fill the emptiness within them, not realizing that emptiness was the void left by separation from their Creator. The transformation was not just individual but cosmic. As the last beings chose light over darkness, the entire galaxy began to sing, literally sing, with harmonies that could be heard across dimensional boundaries. Planets became notes in a cosmic symphony. Star systems formed into movements of pure music. And at the center of it all, the throne room of creation pulsed with rhythms that set the tempo for a universe finally at peace with itself. But perhaps the most remarkable moment came when Jesus rose from his throne and walked among his people not as distant deity but as elder brother. Not as stern judge but as beloved friend. He embraced Admiral Kane and every member of humanity. He welcomed the redeemed Nephilim as prodigal children returned home. He personally thanked every species that had chosen awakening over slumber. "Well done, good and faithful servants," he said to them all. "You have been faithful with little. Now I will give you much. You have proven yourselves worthy to be co-rulers of creation itself. Together, we will spread this awakening beyond our galaxy, to every corner of the universe where consciousness dwells in darkness. We will offer the same choice to every being who has forgotten their divine heritage. And we will not rest until all of creation rings with the song of beings who have remembered who they truly are." The war was over, but the greater work was just beginning. The sovereign king had taken his throne, but he had not taken it alone. Beside him sat representatives of every species that had chosen transformation: humanity and Nephilim, Andromedans and countless others, each now equipped with divine authority to serve as ambassadors of awakening to the universe beyond. As Admiral Kane looked out at a galaxy transformed, where every world bloomed with life and every star sang with joy, he understood that this was not an ending, but a commencement. They had proven that consciousness aligned with love could overcome any darkness. Now it was time to carry that proof to every galaxy in the universe, to every realm of existence where beings still struggled in chains of their own making. The age of cosmic liberation had begun, and its architects were not distant angels or impersonal forces, but transformed humans and their redeemed allies, working hand in hand with the King who had made them partners in the greatest work of all, the awakening of all creation to its divine destiny. In the end, the greatest victory was not that evil had been defeated, but that it had been redeemed. And the greatest glory was not that humanity had proven itself superior, but that it had proven love itself to be the ultimate force in the universe. A force so powerful that it could transform enemies into family, darkness into light, and cosmic war into eternal peace.